Hello, my fellow readers. This is Dark Symphony 777 with another fan fiction review. As always, the link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts on the story. And finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, the story I'm doing a review of today is The Murderess and Her Brain by RWBY. It is a RWBY fan fiction, and I have to be honest, after reading the story, it has to be one of the most frustrating fan fictions I've ever read. I like a lot of the story. Don't get me wrong, I think there's a lot of love that is put into the story, but there's about one or two issues that I really have an issue that I have a problem with. One's bigger than the other. The other one I don't really have that big a problem with because I can kind of see why. But one of them is like really, really bad. So, what is this story about? Well, in order to talk about the plot of the story, I need to actually properly explain something first, and that is Roman Torchwick's death.
As for me, I'll do what I do best. Lie, steal, cheat, and survive!
So that is how Roman Torchwick dies. Now, Roman Torchwick, for those of you who don't know, is actually the main villain of the first 3 seasons of RWBY. He's more or less the big overarching threat that Team RWBY has to deal with throughout those first 3 seasons, and then eventually after that it becomes more of the Cinderfall / Salem show. That's like getting into like the show. Why did I need to show you this? Well, because it's important that I did, because this one death encapsulates the entirety of the plot. Because this story is a crackfic. Yes, you heard that right. It is a crackfic. Now, for those of you who don't know what a crackfic is arguably one of the most, if not the most common type of fan fiction out there. They basically take a simple concept, a concept that realistically can't happen in canon. And it's like, well, what if we actually made that happen? Boom! Crackfic right there. And if we go to like the top of the fan fictions I view, just Better Off Alone. Let's see. Not This Time Fate. Technically could get crackfic. Pretty much any crossover can fall under a crackfic. So this is a crackfic. This is a crackfic. This is a crackfic. This is a crackfic. This can technically be a crackfic if you stretch it enough. This will kind of like on a gray area, but you get what I'm trying to say. Crackfics are incredibly common. They are very. I don't know why I'm going with this. They are very common, but they also have a habit, a very, very bad habit, of constantly fucking up. They are the most common, but arguably one of the hardest types of story to pull off really well. This Murderess and Her Brain is technically what's called a crackfic, but taken seriously, where it's a more rare type of crackfic. Because here's the thing. Crackfics by themselves, on concept, tend to be comedies. They tend to fall into the comedies because it's kind of dealing with the absurdity of the improbability. So them being taken seriously tends to be not very often. However, crackfics taken seriously do happen. They're rare, but they do exist, and Murderess in Her Brain is an example of a crackfic taken seriously. Now, is this a good crackfic taken seriously? Sort of. It really is. But let's actually talk about that as I'm going over the plot. So, the crack part of the story falls under one specific detail. Not two, I almost messed up. And that is Ozpin. Now, if you don't know RWBY, Ozpin is the headmaster of Beacon Academy. Basically, the school where the first 3 seasons take place. And he's basically there to kind of guide all the students to like the future of being huntsmen and huntswomen, and wanting all of them to like, I want all of you to be the best you can be and train to fight the Grim. However, Ozpin is waging a multi-millennia war against the Queen of Grim, Salem, who they were actually married, and the gods basically cursed both of them. They cursed Salem by turning her into the first Grim. Basically, all the Grim you see in the show come from her. And then they kind of realized, oh, we kind of fucked up. And then they cursed Ozpin. They cursed Ozpin with immortality, but like a strange form of immortality. Basically, what they did is Ozpin physically can die, but his soul is immortal. So how that works is there's 3 main rules to the immortality. 1, every time that Ozpin dies, his soul will occupy a random person in the world. He doesn't know what person it will be. Nobody knows what person it will be, but that's kind of how it works. There's only 2 conditions to that. 1, the body is always a guy, because Ozpin's a guy, so, you know, that's kind of how it works. And 2, it has to be someone who is fairly weak physically and incompetent. This is mainly because of how Ozpin works. Ozpin is basically, his soul and mind goes into this person's body, and so they're just one person, 2 minds, and only that person can kind of talk to them. Ozpin can kind of take over the mind and operate their body like a puppet. Because what happens is, Ozpin usually trains the person he's now occupied his body with to physically withstand not only his magic powers, but also his skills that he's crafted and grinded over millennia. So he need to actually like train that, like help that person train their body to be able to move like he should move. Because eventually Ozpin's mind will completely erase the person he's occupied, and now Ozpin will just be by himself in that body. So like think of it like, oh, the second hit, the voices in my head, I'm dead. And now Ozpin, like it's only just Ozpin. The person he's occupying, his identity is just gone. Lost forever. The crack of this fic comes from the fact of subsuming those 2 ideas. 1, he doesn't occupy a guy's body. He occupies a girl's body, specifically Neapolitan. Here's Neo right here. This is basically her. Fun fact: she's actually created because the certain Rooster Teeth members actually saw someone cosplaying as a female version of Roman, and it's like, wait, we can use that, and thus they created Neapolitan. I even like she's actually probably my favorite character in the entire show. I like her design. The whole ice cream theme aesthetic is cool. Her umbrella, her semblance. I'll talk about the semblance in this later because it's kind of important. And I just liked how she was just a very good character. And then Volume 9 completely fucked that up because they needed to get rid of her because she was like not important to the story anymore. It's a mess. God, I've had to talk about fucking Volume 9 again. I'm gonna fucking Point is, Ozpin, instead of being in the guy, is in this chick. And that leads to the second issue. Neapolitan is very hyper-competent. She is not only hyper-competent, she's also a psycho. She's just straight up a psycho. Honestly, there's a part later in this fic, I can't remember what chapter, where they end up in Atlas. Ozpin is now having a mental existential crisis, so he's kind of closed himself off from Neo. So it's like now he can't, like Neo's not able to communicate with him, and he's kind of just disappeared. Neo's response is like, "Hello, are you still in there? Are you gone? No, I can still do magic. I'll kill this person. There's a guy right across the street. I'll kill him if you don't say anything. I'll do it. I'm gonna do it." She then proceeds to kill nearly 20 fucking people just to get a rise out of Ozpin, just to get some kind of acknowledgement. She is just a disturbing character. Like if you watch like all the scenes with Neo in not in RWBY Chibi, because like everyone's kind of intentionally goofy in that web series, in like the canon, you realize how psychopathic Neo actually is. She's legitimately like insane and sociopathic. And that's kind of what leads into the main issue I have with the story is the tone. Now, crackfics on a concept basically tend to be very jokey in nature. That's basically kind of like how you tend to use crackfics. They tend to be very comedic. There are tons of examples where crackfics can be taken seriously, i.e., crackfics taken seriously as a concept. But then that comes across the issue in that a lot of people tend to not take the story seriously because you're relying on writing a type of story that is inherently based around something that's improbable. And people automatically tend to take those types of stories and see them as like comedy. That's something a stereotype that is associated with these fics. They tend to almost always go this way. However, this causes something of a tonal issue when you're trying to do a crack fic taken seriously because you have to establish a tone. Instead of relying on comedy, you have to actually rely on more straight genre, like how you're going to write the story and try and establish a tone. Now, tone is very important to writing any type of story because tone is basically the backbone of trying to make a certain element work. So, like if you're trying to go for like a horror element, it's properly wise to establish the tone to kind of set the stage for that this is a horror fic, and it's the same thing with across every genre. You use the tone to establish this is an adventure fic, this is a romance fic, this is a comedy fic, and there are various different ways to establish it, and even like mixing matching genre. Like for example, this is a crime fantasy. It does establish itself well in the tone of something of a very dark fantasy because it's this story on its own with the characters and how the story portrays itself is very, very dark in tone. Like this is your main character is someone who has no qualms killing people for incredibly petty reasons or even no reason at all. And that's kind of the main backbone of the tone in regards to the story. It's the fact that Osmond's trying to work with someone who is hyper competent and is also willing to murder people and trying to rationalize that as they're trying to do as he's trying to do his Osmond thing, while Neo's trying to do his own thing of just like, I'm fucking doing what I want. I'm doing what I want. And that sets the main tone. The problem is what happens when you fuck up tone. What do I mean by this? Tonal dissonance. When you mess up the tone, especially if you're trying to establish a tone, like different genres and trying to establish their tones and trying to mix and match them and get the tone just right for all those different genres. If you mess up that tonal, it causes tonal dissonance. It completely destroys any sense of immersion, and it also sticks out in all the wrong ways. And that's the first issue I have with the story. This is the bigger issue, is that this story has the author trying to think I will have my cake and eat it too by trying to not only treat this as a crack book, take them seriously, but also as a traditional crack fic, which causes tonal problems. And okay, let me explain. There's two main things you gotta know, and that is the dark side and the comedy side of the story. When it comes to the tonal part of the dark side, like the main overarching plot, which, since I didn't actually explain the plot more or less is just a revenge fic. Neo just wants revenge for all the people who caused the death of Roman. It's like there's no complicated plot. It's literally just Neo just wants revenge. It's a revenge fic, so there's not really much in the way of the plot because it's just revenge. So there's no complexity to that. It's just wants to harm the people that harmed him, that killed him, which are Ruby Rose, Cinderfall, and Salem. She kind of gets her revenge on all three of them. But when it comes to the tone, this tone is a very dark story. That's fine. This is very much clearly meant to be a very dark, disturbing character because the whole point is that Neo is meant to be an irredeemable character. She is not meant to be redeemed. And that kind of leeways into the ending where Neo realizes that she's burned all the bridges. Basically, they kind of sent Salem into space. And now, like, with Salem gone, Neo is just like, what do I do now? Because now, like, pretty much all the society hates her guts and everyone kind of knows her. And now she's just gonna kind of wander around, be like a wanderer or something like that, nomad with Osp in her brain until eventually she takes over her mind. And that's fine. When it comes to the tone of that, like the purposely written irredeemable character who is a flat out sociopath who's willing to kill like anyone and everyone to get her way and manipulates everyone to get to further her goals. I think that's fine. I think the tonal of the dark side is incredibly fine. What's the issue is the comedy aspect of it. What was the author thinking when it came to the comedy of the story? Now, if you want to do like comedy bits and to kind of alleviate and lighten up the mood of a very dark story, that's fine. The problem is use the right type of comedy. So you think, okay, the character's sociopathic. Story is very dark and disturbing. You would think, oh, probably like dark humor or corpse humor or gallows humor would fit fine. And honestly, there are a couple of there's like very few dark jokes because the vast majority of the jokes are low random. They're either Neo breaking the fourth wall, visible confusion, sex jokes. Like, what? Huh? What does sex jokes have to do with, like, honestly, like, here's the thing. A lot of jokes do work. Like, a lot of jokes are genuinely funny. They're just such a tonal clash with what the story is about. Like, there's a part where Neo pretends to be Yang and kind of tricks Blake into, like, being horny. It's like, ha, I will embarrass Yang all this time. And then when Blake kind of runs into Yang, Blake's like, can we do it? And it's like, and Neo's like, yes, she's gonna be embarrassed. And then Yang goes, sure. And Neo's like, huh? Neo's just completely confused. So Blake and Yang then go into the bedroom with very thin walls, and you can actually, the story actually goes out of his way to write down that everyone, including Yang's sister, is hearing the sex. And then after that, as that's going on, Neo mentions oh god, I made Bumblebee canon before it actually happened. Where he's like, what did he actually I read that and I am just so completely confused on what the fuck just happened. Because what is and that like I said, when you have conflicting tonals that clash, you immediately catch it. And when you see someone doing, oh, it's a random sex joke sort of deal, and it doesn't fit what the story's trying to tell, you immediately catch on to it. You notice it, and he's like, this doesn't make sense. And it even gets worse because now you a later part where they're fighting Hazel, and then Ironwood has a fucking Gatling gun penis. I don't fucking know. That's just lol random sex humor for the sake of sex humor. Like my favorite, it doesn't make any sense. My favorite joke is actually, so for context of this part right here at the end, Neo actually kidnaps Ruby Rose, the main character of RWBY itself, to do a sort of pseudo, what's the term? Batman gambit, I guess the trope would be used, to lure Cinder fall, one of the people that Neo wants to kill her. So they learn to a hotel. Neo pretends to be Ruby. Ruby pretends to be Neo. She's basically using her power. Like I said, I'll talk about that because that's actually very important. Trick Cinder or trick Cinder into getting herself locked, like stuck in a small room. Have Ruby basically kill Cinder, and then Neo proceeds to basically butcher Cinder's body, stabbing her and even pulling out her heart and organs, and they're both covered in blood. So it's like, so Ruby's like, "Yay, we finally did it!" Neo's response: hit her in the throat with Osborn's cane because she lost her umbrella, and basically causing Ruby to kind of knock out. What does Neo do afterwards? Well, because Ruby played a part in killing Roman, Neo proceeds, well, I can't really kill you because I need your eyes. So what I'm going to do instead is, I'm going to perform homemade surgery on your throat and remove your larynx. Basically robbing Ruby's ability to talk. So basically forcibly making her mute. So this is causing so when Ruby wakes up, she looks at Neo's and tries to speak. She starts panicking the fact that she can't speak now, and Neo's just looking at her and trying to wordlessly try to convince her why do you do this? Neo's response turns into Roman's and it causes Ruby to have an existential crisis because she realized she did have a part to play in this, and she's just still trying to compose herself and try and rationalize everything. So then Neo sits down right next to her and basically, gives her a hug and starts, rubbing her head and stuff like that. And now Ruby's just completely confused because first off, both characters are still covered in blood, Cinder's blood, and now Ruby's like, what? Huh? Why are you doing this? What does Neo do? Uses Cinder's blood that's still in her body, puts it on her fingers, opens up Ruby's hand, and draws a little square on it. And it's and basically just tells her to point to it. And Ruby's just trying to figure everything out. What? Why? Huh? Hey, huh? Why draw a square on me? It's down the hall. It's to where I fought Cinder. So Cinder was the first, and Neo used me to kill her. Then my number 2 on our list for vengeance because Neo's raw doing puppets and charades, and Ruby's trying to figure everything out, and so it kind of ends with oh, she's gotten her revenge. Now we're square. That's actually a pretty funny joke. It's a very dark joke because oh wait, why'd you save me? Why'd you write a bloody square on my hand? It's actually a pretty well done joke. It's a very dark joke, but it's actually a really well done joke. It's this type of humor that I was expecting out of the story, not penis gun. Why? It causes a lot of jarring tonal dissonance because now you're constantly trying to read, hoping that you don't see something as jarring as all random humor happen. And thankfully, the last 5 chapters of the story, all the humor just goes away and it becomes a very dark, disturbing adventure story. But that tonal dissonance never really leaves one's mind when now you're just trying to automatically expect it. And this happens all throughout the story. All throughout chapters 1 to 20, there is just so much of that random-ass humor that you can't really take entire chunks of the story seriously because there's usually some kind of random sex joke or random lol humor or fourth wall break somewhere in there just completely unnecessarily and completely destroying any sense of tension that the scene has. That's why when you're trying to do these types of, when you're trying to add humor to certain situations, there's tons of different types of humor, and certain humor works better with certain situations. That's why I liked this joke, because it's a joke that fit the tone of the story. It's a very dark joke, very settled into like gallows humor sort of deal, but it fits. No, I will say that a lot of these jokes are funny. They just don't fit the story. They really just don't. If they were in like a more comedic story, yeah, I can see them working in that. But in this story, it's just very off-putting. So now we get into the characters, or character, because there's really only Neo to talk about, and that leads to our other issue. Neo is a Mary Sue in this story. Now, to defend this, I will say I do think with the whole revenge vibe, because it's like a pseudo power fantasy sort of deal, I can deal with Neo being a Sue to a point. I don't like how the author turned everyone into an idiot to kind of reinforce that. Again, this is like a situation where the idea by itself is fine. It's just everything around it kind of fucked it over. Because the author decided to make everyone just blindingly stupid, especially in regards to Neo's semblance, which is called overactive imagination. So I need to actually explain what Neo's power does, because this is because it has to tie into this. So, what is overactive imagination? Overactive imagination is Neo's specific semblance. If you actually watch my From Beyond review, it works very similarly to Blake's semblance. At a base concept, basically, she uses her aura to kind of create an image to kind of distract people. However, past that base concept, there is a lot different stuff you can do with overactive imagination. Basically, overactive imagination is just Blake's semblance on crack. Like, the only thing that Blake's shadow semblance can do better is interact with dust. While Neo's has like a more general baseline in terms of like actual effectiveness of her power. So basically, how Neo's semblance works is basically the idea of mental imagery. She basically is like, okay, so at any time, Neo can summon a clone of not only herself, like a pitch perfect clone, but like anyone she can really think of. Anyone that's in her mind, she can just summon. She can use her aura and turn that aura into like a facsimile of this person. That person can have minor interactions with everything. So like it can hold, like Neo can manipulate someone to like move around, or like they can't speak, but she can use it to move around, make them do poses and stuff like that. And if they're broken anyway, it's usually surrounded with like a symbol of like them turning into broken glass, like shattered glass and stuff like that. Neo can also use this power to disguise herself into anyone. So if she wanted to, like, say she wants to turn into like Ruby Rose, she can do that. She wants to turn into Ozpin, she can do that. Salem, Cinder, no, as long as she physically knows the person, she can turn into them. However, there is a specific con to this power, is due to the fact that since Neo physically cannot talk, that is a very veritable weakness for this power in connection with her, because of like, take for example, she turns into Ruby Rose. Ruby Rose is a very talkative person. That's kind of like a big character trait of hers. So when she starts randomly being silent and using body language to kind of tell everything, that'd be a very, very big red flag, because that Ruby Rose may not actually be Ruby Rose. It may be Neo. And she can do that and she can also do this with other people, but the same thing with the voice, like say Ruby disguised as Yang, like the moment Yang quotation mark opens her mouth, you hear Ruby's voice from it. It's kind of like the voice is kind of like the big weakness of the power. So that's more or less it. There is other stuff like Neo can turn himself and technically blend in with like surroundings around her. and then like there's the whole power up she gets in Volume 9 where she can actually make the she can make the illusions actually interact with the real world and actually do damage. Like that was like another big weakness for their power. Unlike Shadow can actually attack, while overactive imagination basically is just a diversionary tactic. What with like the power up in Volume 9, she can now make like an army of clones of herself, and they can all just attack people. But that's like Volume 9 specific. That's more or less how overactive imagination works. Here's the thing. In this story, everyone, by the time that she gets to Atlas, everyone knows how her powers work. They know how she uses them. She knows that they know how her powers function, and they should realistically think of ways to combat it or deal with it. What happens? Everyone seems to conveniently forget how her semblance works, allowing her to get away from everything. The entire story revolves around her. There's entire parts where like everyone's just kind of standing, and she kind of just still gets away because she leaves a clone behind as she's walking away, and no one bats an eye. Or even when she's disguising herself as other people, like there are moments where it at least makes sense, like when she's doing the prank on Blake. Like Blake's like half asleep, so she's probably not thinking him right when she sees Yang just randomly enter her room and not say anything. So it's like, okay, you can make an argument for that. But then there are entire times where like they know how Neo's power works. She knows she can disguise herself as them. And then all of a sudden they see a person randomly just not talking anymore and using body language, and it's like they're still kind of conversing with them. It's like, oh, how you doing? Oh yeah, it's fine. And it's like, and no one connects the dots. It's another immersion breaking moment because it's something that everyone kind of just acknowledges how her powers work, but she still gets away with it. It's such a weird running gag of her everyone just kind of falling for it. It's such a weird, it's just a weird thing. And I haven't even gotten to like Neo's character. Like Neo herself is fine when she's not doing the whole rant, like the whole fourth wall breaking. She's basically an irredeemable character. That's a big part of this story, is the fact that Neo's purposely supposed to be irredeemable, and so the whole thing is like the story kind of goes in a direction where she's like, okay, I'm working with you to get rid of Cinder. Like she pretends to be redeemed because everyone realizes she has Ozpin in her head, so that means Ozpin's gonna keep her in line. No, Neo basically pulls one over on Ozpin, gets him shuts him down, and come in, and then basically betrays everyone, saying, "I just want Cinder's dead. I don't need you anymore. Bye bye," and just skedaddles. And then you have the Atlas half of the story where it's like it's kind of implying that Neo's might possibly actually be redeemed, but then they kind of start making the characters start making fun of Rome by calling him like Raymond or something like that, and then she just completely loses it and just loses her control and like kills the only person who's actually able to communicate with her, which is like a dog guy, and she's like, "When did I killed him? I don't, huh?" And therein lies another problem with Neo's character. The fact that she gets pseudo redeemed at the end of the story, it doesn't really fit the story, because again, their whole thing is that she's a sociopathic. Kill her, like if it was like foreshadowed throughout the stories, like her, like she's still a very veritable sociopath, variable psychopath, and the story kind of just like inches her towards the fact that she's gonna eventually do the right thing, especially since she realizes that she can't kill Salem, so she kind of have to be good, but she keeps burning all these bridges to kind of do that because she can't really help herself. That would be fine. Instead, what happens is she pretends to be good, and then she comes back to evil and murders a bunch of people, and then she only turns good because she meets someone who can actually understand her body language, which is such a very weird way of redeeming someone. And then because they kind of poke fun at Roman for like a couple of sentences, she kills him, causes Team Juniper to die, causes a bunch of people to die, and then causes Blake and Weiss to like assassinate Ironwood because he's now gone mad with power, trying to get Salem away from Atlas. And it's like, oh, now she's actually redeemed. It's like, that's such a weird way of doing things. I mean, it works because the final 5 chapters were at least compelling enough that like, okay, Neo being redeemed kind of makes sense, but like, it could have been done better. It really could have. And Neo's core character being like this irredeemable monster who like kind of falsely softens up to kind of trick Ruby into doing her job to help her get the Cinder, and then eventually slowly actually becoming good is a very jarring thing. I would have preferred it if she like stayed an irredeemable monster forever, but then realized that everyone, like most of the people dead, she's better off just kind of wandering the world, trying to contemplate things. That was like the same issue. I think I wish I wanted Neela to do in like Volume 9, like her realizing like how fucked up she is and how much Cinder has played her for full, and just going like staying in the world behind just to kind of find herself, which does happen. She does stay behind, but after like killing Ruby. I don't want to remember that. I'm not talking about Volume 9 again. But I like Neo's character. I didn't like Osmond's character mainly because Osmond spends like half the story completely gone. Mainly because he realizes that Ruby did kill Roman accidentally. Basically, what happened is after he gets eaten, Ruby kills the Grim that eaten him. He's somehow still alive, leaning over the ship. Roman basically is like, hey, let me up. I'll teach you. I'll show you how to like disable the paladins. Like the device in the cockpit. He's like, the device in the cockpit. I can deal with that. And she kind of wanders off with like her semblance, like leave behind rose petals as she moves super fast. And one of the rose petals actually goes inside Roman's mouth. It just kind of chokes on it and like falls. It's like, wait, honestly, it's just a stupid thing. I don't know. But Osmond just act as like Osmond, like him kind of realizing why he was in Neo this entire time, being like they're both really mentally broken characters that kind of worked well together because they kind of mentally needed each other to like learn a lesson. I think it could be worse. Again, the issue is the fact that Neo properly was redeemed at the end, especially like the last thing she does before the story ends, like get like the staff of creation to heal Ruby's throat so that she can talk again. It's like I'm fine with Ruby talking again so that way she can be with her mother, but Neo herself being redeemed, I'm just not really feeling it. Every other character is basically just a tool for Neo to manipulate, so they quite literally barely count as characters. They're just plot devices. They're literally all plot devices for Neo to manipulate and maneuver around to get what she wants at the end. That's more or less it with characters. Again, I can forgive Neo for being a Mary Sue if the author didn't make everyone so stupid. Like, okay, fine. Neo essentially winning everything. Neo being smarter than everyone. I can forgive that, but the author had to really make everyone else just utterly retarded in order for to do that. It's just a weird thing. Grammar errors. I didn't see any grammar errors. I think the grammar was fine. Pacing. I There is a lot of jumbling of the whole thing because of the simple fact this one butcher. This story technically starts at volume 4 with her going to with Neo going to Menagerie, getting like recruiting Blake and manipulating Blake. Blake like getting her revenge. Like, oh no, I don't trust you, blowing up the whole white thing base. And then each 5 chapters technically representing an arc. I think it's fine. I think yeah, I think the pacing's fine overall. Honestly, I think some parts could have been a little slower paced, but that's not really much of a complaint because like it's only really like some of the fights, like the fight with like her getting to Salem inside the whale, and that could have been slower paced. But that's such a minor thing. It's really not really much of a complaint. Sentence structure, I think honestly the sentence structure of the story is actually really clever. Where there's 3 types of talking. There's talking through prose, there's talking through italics, and talking through middle lines, and then regular dialogue. And it actually shows a different mindset that's going on because Neo can't not physically talk. Instead, Neo actually talks through prose. So basically, you have to read the prose to understand what Neo is thinking about. And that's basically what it is. You just she's using body language. She's using like her mind to kind of tell Ozpin what's going on, and also using prose to kind of tell us how she's behaving, what she's thinking about, how she's operating. I think it's pretty clever. The thoughts is the italics is basically Ozpin, like you can see right here. Sun Wukong. That's if it's italics, then it's actually Ozpin communicating through Neo. But if there's dialogue happening from Neo, that's actually Ozpin occupying her mouth. Basically Neo's like throat like actually functionally works. She just doesn't talk. Like she just can't talk, so it's probably like a mental block. So when Ozpin occupies Neo's body, Ozpin actually has control of her mouth and can properly communicate. And there's parts in the story where it's thought processes, but there's a middle line through it. That's actually to signify that Neo is actually thinking of things that Ozpin cannot hear. And so that's how she's able to operate and get one over on Ozpin. She's able to like make her thoughts separate from Ozpin, so that way Ozpin cannot understand it. That's in essence that's what's supposed to represent any sentence that has a line through it. It's supposed to be like thoughts that other people cannot know about. Although oddly enough, the author also uses it to describe fucking Ironwood, saying, "The only one I want tied up right here is that hot, sexy Shani." And like Weiss is like completely like disgusted, like, that's my sister. But I think it's pretty clever how using the different types of writing styles, fonts to tell like who's speaking and how they're speaking. I think that's pretty clever. So would I recommend this story? I mean, I don't like the humor. I don't think the humor fits. But I do think Neo's character is good. I think the overall plot is good. But that tonal dissonance is just so jarring and off-putting. Is that bad enough that make you not want to recommend it? No, I don't think it's bad enough. It comes pretty close because I do think the whole law random it's just so out there and off-putting that it genuinely like should not be here. And it's not, but I don't think it's enough to make you not want to recommend it. Just know what you're getting into when you're reading the story. It's like just know that there's going to be like really, really bad, like unfitting humor for the story throughout the entire, to like most of the story. Favorite part? Maybe the end? No. I mean, Neo tricking Salem by putting up illusions of her and Ozpin's kids is more clever than like worthwhile. Don't really think. I can't really think of anything really. Maybe no, I can't think of anything. So, what would I change? Simply just change the humor. Like you can go one thing, you can go full on comedy, which means you have to change the entire structure of the story. You would have to make it a traditional crack fic, or just change. Or what I think you should do, change the humor, make the humor fit the story more, which means dark humor, gallows humor, black humor, which is like death humor, just more humor that just fits the tone of what you're trying of the story you're trying to tell. That's it. Like I said, I can deal with Neo being a Mary Sue, even like making everyone stupid, like maybe make everyone smarter, like have her be more clever of trying to get away from everyone to kind of do her own job, or better yet, just make her spend like the entire second half of the story kind of trying to still manipulate everyone behind the scenes and trying to do it all. But that would make the story so much longer because you have to go because you would have to make like so many different other point of views from like Weiss and Blake and Ruby and Crow and even Ironwood to an extent. It just I don't think that would be worth it. So I just change just fix the humor. I think it's just good enough. So yeah, that is my review of The Murderess and Her Brain. This has been Dark Symphony 777 and cut.